Guys, Breece Hall, brutal, man. We hope he makes a full recovery, but in this silly game we call Dynasty Football, we got to make pivots. So are you going Breece Hall or a 23 second, a 24 first, and a 24 second?
See you, Breece.
Taking the first. Taking the pick package all day.
Breece Hall or Amon-Ra St. Brown?
St. Brown.
Yeah, I'm starting to get a little worried about St. Brown. Just these injuries piling up on me.
He's been injured, but
I'm taking Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Yep.
Breece Hall or George Kittle?
Breece Hall.
Oh, Breece Hall.
Yeah.
Devin Singletary and a 24 first or Breece Hall?
I'm taking the pick in Singletary.
Yeah, I think it's a little closer on the 24 first versus a 23 first. I like getting Singletary back if you're a contending team. Obviously, it's a placeholder. I actually have an inbox offer that is a 23 first and Devin Singletary for Breece Hall, which I'm going to accept when I'm able to. So that kind of gives you an idea that I would take the 23, the 24. I think I'd probably still lean that side, but it's obviously closer because it's a year out on the pick. And I know we value the 23 picks highly, and the 24 class could be just as good, but I do think in this case you can be a little picky and ask for the 23.
Breece Hall or Juju Smith-Schuster and 23 seconds?
No, Breece Hall.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I would take probably Breece because I would want to get a different trade because I feel like I now have to do work to move the other three pieces for stuff that can help me. But I can also see a world where, can I trade Juju in a second for a 24 first? And then it kind of becomes one of the deals you've already asked for. So I think it's possible to move that. You just have to do the extra work to put in the second trade.
Well, Scott, I'm going to stop you right there, my friend, and tell you, no, you cannot trade Juju Smith-Schuster in a 24 second for a 24 first. And if anyone is doing that in your league, you need to make trades with them repeatedly and as often as possible because they are not that bright.
I mean, is that crazy of an ask, Clay? The 24 second and Juju for a first?
That's way too much. If I could make that trade, I would make that trade. I'm going to go trade for Juju in every league now and try to make that deal. Because if anyone accepts that, they are just foolhardy. Juju is way no. I'm sorry. No. I can't even articulate it.
All right, this is a Breece Hall podcast.
Yeah, let's talk Breece Hall, man. Again, this is very unfortunate, but what's our game plan? What's our take? Scott, you go first.
We just want to immediately say, well, it's Akers, it's Dobbins, it's Javonte Williams. It's the exact same thing. I mean, I think we have to look at it a little bit differently. The timing isn't the same. This happened 2 months into his rookie year instead of at the beginning of his sophomore year. So we have, I think Akers was July of his sophomore year. Dobbins was August. Javonte was September. So you have like a buffer of about 9 to 11 months there ahead of schedule. So if you're just comparing those guys, it didn't happen as early. My biggest argument against those guys is you basically lose like the 2 prime years for a running back, which is like year 2 and year 3. I don't think you're going to be at risk of losing year 3 with Breece Hall, right? It's just going to be the end of this year, maybe some of next year, maybe all of next year, depending on his recovery. Destination Devy injury guy, Jeff Mueller at JM Thrive PT on Twitter. We've talked about this already ad nauseum today. Like, this is a little bit better news than the Javonte injury because he doesn't have the MCL injury. There's a meniscus tear, which they're not going to really know the severity until they get in there and repair it. But if it's just that, this may lean on being one of those, he could be back in 9 months, could be back in 12 months. I mean, Gus Edwards' injury, he just came back on Sunday. His injury wasn't supposed to be like super serious, and it took him more than a year to come back.
Right.
So I don't think we can say, clean ACL, he'll be good to go for training camp. He'll be starting by week 1. I think we probably have to conservatively say like half of his 2022 is going to be interrupted, right? And I think the other thing is we know these teams, even if he's good to go, what does that mean from a usage standpoint? But more importantly, what does that mean from a market standpoint? The narrative is going to be, well, the Jets are going to ease him back in. And then he might not be as good right away. He might deal with residual injuries. Like, there's a lot of things that are going to just impact me saying, I'm not sure he ever gets back to the value he's at right now, unless he has a Saquon Barkley recovery where he recovers, goes out, has a season where he smashes, and then maybe in 2024, at the earliest, he's close to where he is now. So I do think there's merit in whatever team you have him on, at least shopping him. If you can get some of the deals we're talking about, the idea of getting a liquid first-round pick and then a filler running back or 2 assets, it's appealing, regardless of where your team is. If you're rebuilding, I think you shop them if you're rebuilding. someone offers you a mid 23 first, you could end up with a running back close to as good as Breece Hall. And there's no risk, right? You have a pick. You can maybe use that pick to trade in other capacities. So I think you just got to do your due diligence and shop. And if you just can't get the offers because your league's not biting, oh well. But you got to shop them. You got to shop these guys that have these devastating injuries because you're taking on a lot of risk if you don't.
So would you take a mid 23 first over Breece Hall right now?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Yes, I would. You should have been trying to trade Breece Hall anyway if you were contending, if you were rebuilding. He's a running back, right? What do we talk about? Running backs are grenades, and we don't take any pleasure in this. This just is what keeps happening. One of our listeners just mentioned on Twitter earlier in the season, he traded Jonathan Taylor for Breece Hall in the first. Then he traded Breece Hall for Deshaun Watson or something to that effect. You just keep moving it around to an asset that's less volatile, that's less likely to suffer a career-altering injury. We're looking at a year and a half before he's back to normal. So another season and a half, right? So 2023, he's going to play. He's not going to be the same guy unless he's Adrian Peterson. And Adrian Peterson's basically the only guy we've ever seen come back and not miss a beat at all, not miss one beat. Saquon, when he came back from his injury, he wasn't good. He was very bad. And then he got injured again. Christian McCaffrey, different type of injury, obviously. But when he came back, bad. J.K. Dobbins, this is kind of what happened to a running back. Like, it's a hard position just to step back in. So I think you should be aggressively selling him too. I mean, I've gone out and traded him in 3 leagues in the span of today. As soon as I got confirmation that it was an actual tear and not a sprain, I said, all right, it's time for me to move on.
So let me ask you this. Do we need to be taking all our Jonathan Taylor and Najee Harris, DeAndre Swift, and be trading for wide receivers? Do we need to get out on running back?
Well, those names you mentioned, one of them doesn't belong. That's Najee Harris.
Najee.
I think he's a guy you probably take. I don't want to say you take a second, but you're not getting any first. So I do think he's the perfect type of player. If you think about like where the dead zones are, he's a classic dead zone running back for the rest of his career, unless he just gets force fed a ton of volume, is on a team that scores a lot of touchdowns, and somehow like he starts getting targeted again. There's a lot of things going against him because Shane's even talked about this. Like, he's just not that good. So he's a guy, I'm liquid. I don't even care where my team is. I'm liquidating him because I don't really think he's doing anything other than just holding a place. And I'm probably starting him every week because he's Najee Harris. Right. And I'm really missing out on starting, the backup running back that's getting a spot start. So I think he's kind of a poison pill on a roster. Swift and JT, I think we're always about cashing out on running backs until it gets down to the point where it's like, man, I got a contending team. Jonathan Taylor's my only running back. Okay, unless you can pivot downwards and pick up extra assets. If you want to just ride out that one running back the rest of the year, then fine. But I think we'd also go, man, I have Jonathan Taylor. I can pivot down to, DeAndre Swift and 2 seconds. And then I can pivot down again. And then all of a sudden I get to a point where I have a couple usable guys. I don't care if they expire over the next year, because guess what? I've built up an extra first, a couple extra seconds, a couple receivers. Like, I've kind of built up the value over time by constantly turning these running backs, which is why Shane said, you hit on the next Breece Hall and he's going for 2 first plus, at least do your due diligence and shop. It doesn't mean you get out entirely on every single share. But if you end up with 4 Bijan Robinsons next year, are you telling me you're going to just say he's a Hall of Famer and never explore trading any of the 4 when they're clearly trading for like 2 plus firsts, where you can add to one of them and get a quarterback? So you always got to be doing it. That's just the nature of the running back position. And I think we're going to see, for a future video, we are going to see a shift in the way the masses start playing Dynasty at running back after this injury. You see, we all kind of expected older guys to get hurt, guys that have been hurt before to get hurt. Even second-year guys. We took the Dobbins and the Akers injury. The Javonte one stung. But the fact that Breece Hall literally moves to RB1 and then he's done that quickly, nobody is safe. I don't care how good you are, how generational you are, how explosive you are, how great your situation is. It could all be gone in a flash, and it just seems like, the running backs are where all the risk is. So I think we're going to see a fundamental shift of how people play Dynasty at running back because of this single injury, and we'll be able to measure that over the rest of the season.
And it's going to be totally wild next startup season how far running backs are going to fall. How it's going to be quarterbacks and wide receivers, and running backs are going to be way down.
Well, I mean, we've already started that shift, right? We've already started that shift because, well, running backs weren't getting the usage that we really wanted, right? They weren't scoring except for McCaffrey's seasons. Like, Scott's brought it up before. JT's running back one season last year was kind of pedestrian. Like, I mean, not to say like it was bad, but compared to like previous RB1 seasons,
CMC,
right? It wasn't especially needle moving. So I think we've already seen that shift, and it's just going to continue. Now we're going to get to the point where you're going to have to go, well, you know what? Is it worth me zagging where everyone else is zigging and me going heavy at running back, knowing there's an inherent risk, but I can do it cheaper? Like what's cheaper to obtain? Is it going to be Jonathan Taylor? Is it going to be Jamar Chase? Because both of them are the one at their position or the two at their position, but which one's actually obtainable? Now, again, obviously all the risk will be on the Jonathan Taylor side, but if I only have to give up a first and a second to get Jonathan Taylor, is that worth the risk as opposed to giving up 2 or 3 firsts for Jamar Chase? Now, where it's going to get interesting too is the rookie draft next year, right? Because it's chock full of running backs that we are absolutely in love with. Like there's like 7 of them that should be easily first round rookie picks. I'm already thinking now, I want to get out of this draft if I can. Like, Bijan Robinson would be awesome, but what would be less awesome? Bijan Robinson tearing his ACL in week 7, and then me going through this again. And wide receivers are less likely to do that. They just are. So can I flip Bijan Robinson for AJ Brown plus? Bijan Robinson just being the name or the proxy. So I'm definitely looking at that and start 2 running backs. I mean, there's a reason that we like bad running backs, right? Because we don't really get sad when they go down. Like, we'll talk about later, but Michael Carter had about a minute and a half where he was the new hotness, but James Robinson got traded there. And it's not like I'm heartbroken for Michael Robinson or Michael Carter in comparison like I am for Breece Hall.
You guys said that you made some Breece trades today. Shane, what trades did you make?
I know the crowd are going to hate me, but you know what? You got to pivot and you got to keep your head on a pivot, swivel, whatever. Traded Breece Hall in 2 leagues straight up for George Pickens. Yeah, look, coming into the season, I said, look, you should have traded George Pickens for a 23 plus. Well, it looks like I kind of did that, just not the way I want it to. Giving up Breece Hall. We talked about why with the running back. I also traded him for Jameson Williams and Paris Campbell, but that was kind of just the throw-in. Jameson's coming off an injury too, right? And he hasn't played yet. But again, there's degrees of injuries and there's positional differences between a wide receiver and a running back. I wouldn't trade for someone like Marquise Brown, who's injured because he's got shattered foot syndrome. And you know what I mean? This is twice in the span of 4 years that his foot has been absolutely just destroyed. That's why I wouldn't be trading for Marquise Brown. I have no problem trading for an injured player, but not someone that it seems like it could be something chronic.
Scott, I know you have some Breece trades too, but first off, what do you think about Shane's trade, Breece Hall for George Pickens straight up?
I mean, what's the tagline say? It's process over players. So, I mean, a lot of people are going to look at those trades and go, oh, it's just a 1-for-1. All you're getting is a receiver. Well, Shane's getting liquidity. He's going to have a better shot probably to move George Pickens over the next 5-6 months, especially with what you talked about, like the wide receiver landscape. Now, is George Pickens going to probably have to take another step in his development? He's probably going to have to show even more than what he has. But if he does that, let's say he goes out and has 2 more big games in a row. All of a sudden, you're sitting with an asset that a lot of other people in your league are going to be interested in because of A, what he's just shown, but B, he's going to fit where a lot of people are going to go, at least what we're predicting. A lot of people are going to go in terms of how they're building rosters. So he may be able to turn around and flip George Pickens for a 24 first and another receiver or something like that. And all of a sudden he's accumulating value. It's going to be very hard to like snowball value with an injured running back that is basically going to be buried for 6 months. Maybe it pops back up next May or June. And like we see some recovery videos on Breece Hall. Hey, he's cutting, he's looking good. Then you maybe have a market for him. But the way we play, I don't have 9 to 10 months to just sit and wait. And I think that's where Shane's getting ahead of this is he's liquidating for probably what's going to be the highest market price that he can liquidate for. Because otherwise the market's just kind of going to dry out. And I think that's why we both, we're both within a day of the injury the day of the injury, we're in there going, how can I trade him? How can I trade him? What can I get? So I did the same thing. I mean, I traded A guy messaged me last night before we even got confirmation that it was an ACL injury. I'm going to be 6-1. He goes, I'll give you McCaffrey for Breece Hall in a third. Done. So I took it. I'm like, I like how McCaffrey looked on San Francisco. I think there's a shot that he could blow up. Even if I'm getting only 8 games of blow up, I'll take it. The other one I traded him for what's probably like a 106 to 109 in this year's rookie class. I already have the 101 and the 102. So I have maybe Gibbs and Bijan already coming in. Yep. And it's a start 1 running back league. So I'm sitting there going like, in a start 1 running back league, the market for them is dead.
Nothing.
Like people don't really ever need them. So like if you can get a mid first in 23, when I already have those picks, gone. I'll worry about that later. And then the third one was the Singletary deal that I mentioned. So I think you can move. You just got to move quickly.